Street Fighter 6 is an upcoming fighting video game that is being developed and published by Capcom. The title is the follow-up to 2016's Street Fighter V and has been rumored throughout 2019 and 2020. Let's break down insider leaks, platforms we can expect the title on, and the release window. As always, all the sources will be linked in the description below, so make sure to check those out and support those original articles. Also, make sure to follow me on Twitter at Fonct2 for updates on all future videos and the channel. With that out of the way, let's get into everything we know about Street Fighter 6. The first story I want to cover is the first mention of the title, which came in July of 2019 from a tweet by Yoshinori Ono, who, if you aren't familiar, is one of the driving forces behind the current Street Fighter games. Ono has produced the Street Fighter franchise since 1998, but took a leadership role starting with Street Fighter 4, and he is often credited with a lot of the success behind the direction the game is going in. With that context, going back to his Twitter account, he posted a picture with the Street Fighter games along with some extra merchandise, and the tweet itself said, quote, "I don't have SF6, referencing Street Fighter 6, and said, whoever said so. Our mind is only in one place, SFVAE, or Street Fighter V Arcade Edition work," and then he closes out the tweet with a wink. And this tweet alone doesn't show anything, but it still is considered the first mention of the title and got fans thinking Capcom might have already started development on the next Street Fighter game back in 2019. The rumors continued further in December of 2019 when Capcom announced that for the Capcom Cup 2019, the champion will not have an auto-qualifying spot for CC 2020. And most fans speculated this could mean that a Street Fighter 6 reveal was coming, because this was the same thing Capcom did in 2015 for the champion, who also did not have an auto-qualified position in the 2016 Cup for the launch of Street Fighter V, which is the only time we've seen this before. So just using that as a reference, fans were thinking, okay, if they're doing this for 2019 and 2020, are we going to see the release and reveal of Street Fighter 6 soon? And immediately this timeline would make sense, with Capcom wanting to take advantage of the next generation of consoles, but at the time any further details were just speculation and no one was completely sure what Capcom was planning. Then we can get into the insider information from Dusk Golem, who is a name I've mentioned countless times on this channel before, and I consider a trusted source within the gaming industry, especially regarding Capcom specifically. But with all rumors, take it with a grain of salt, and with any game development news, everything is subject to change. The information could be completely right, but Capcom could have shifted, or any number of things could have happened. So with all of this, take it with a grain of salt and believe what you want to believe. But with that out of the way, Dusk Golem says in August of 2020 that, quote, "As Capcom is trending for Street Fighter stuff, though I'm not really a Street Fighter fan, I can mention I know the reason for the unexpected Street Fighter V Season Pass. The most basic gist of it is Street Fighter 6 was supposed to release next year, but it was not received well internally or with testers. There's this team mechanic the game was too focused on. The director, who was Ono, got demoted again, and someone else was put in charge to, quote, fix Street Fighter 6 with an additional year in development. And the new season pass is to buy time for that. There's a bit more to it, but I know talking about this stuff makes people ask you about it, and I really don't care that much about fighting games, though my brother loves them. For what it's worth, I've heard the extra year and new direction / fixes and direction they've taken it has been doing wonders." And then he clarifies slightly. He said, "I typed Eno, but I meant Ono. He was the director for Street Fighter 6, but the game didn't come out good. The new director I don't know much about, but here she's pretty well known in the fighting game community and brought some really cool ideas to fix the game with what was there." And before I get into any more details, there was immediate pushback on Dusk Golem by fans for saying that Ono was a game director, which they were claiming is not true, and Dusk Golem responded by saying that producer roles at Capcom fill the roles of traditional game directors, and it's not as cut and clear as game directors and producers, and he claimed that a lot of that is the same at Capcom. The pushback went further when fans quoted some sort of convention depending on the source, but it's a convention in 2019 when Ono allegedly said Capcom would be lucky if development for Street Fighter 6 started in a year or two, meaning that development wouldn't even start until 2020 or 2021, and that Capcom was going to support Street Fighter 5 for 8 seasons. And with this whole quote in general, I'm not going to spend any more time on the rebuttal, because as we get further, we learn that Dusk Golem, at least about the release and development, was mostly on the mark with his information. The only things that we really couldn't confirm is Ono's exact position at the time, and who this mysterious female developer was that took over. And along with this convention quote about the Street Fighter 6 development not starting, trying to track that down to the original source is almost impossible, because people mention multiple different conventions he said it at, multiple different years, and no one really has an exact clip, and it's just all hearsay and something that people quote so much so they say it's true. So I'm not going to spend any more time on that, but you can believe whatever you want there. And a few days after Dusk Golem's leak, Ono announced that he was leaving Capcom, and he made a long post on Twitter, which really isn't relevant for this video, but says that Capcom staff in the new generation will continue taking care of the Street Fighter brand. And that for the most part covers the general leaks and rumors around the title. But at this point, the community was still very split on Dusk Golem's information and thought that Street Fighter 6 wasn't even in development at all, and Capcom was still many years away from creating the game, which wasn't the case, and it was closer than a lot of fans thought. And the next leak we have to talk about was in regards to the platforms that Street Fighter 6 will be on. Because Street Fighter 5 was a PlayStation exclusive, Xbox fans weren't sure if this trend would continue with Street Fighter 6. But a leaked email was released and mentioned Street Fighter 6, and the email lists the game Street Fighter 6 and gives platforms as the PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, PS4, and PC. Which is massive, not only because the title is no longer an exclusive to Sony, but will also be across console generations. And if you are concerned with the validity of the email itself, the emails were actually removed on Twitter after a report from the copyright holder, which we can only assume is Capcom. So for the sake of this video, the email will be blurred, but if you look around the internet, I'm sure you can find the full email if you are so inclined. So yes, it does look like the game will be available on all main consoles, excluding the Switch, but it also confirms that the game is happening, so much so that Capcom is even discussing what platforms the title will be on. And the last topic I want to cover is the internal Capcom leak. That happened in November of 2020. Capcom announced that third-party hackers were able to infiltrate their systems, and even Capcom wasn't sure what the hackers had been able to gather from their servers. For the sake of this video, we will be discussing the internal release schedule Capcom had for all their projects that was leaked, and the list included Street Fighter 6, which is set for a Q3 fiscal 2022 release, Super Street Fighter 6 in Q4 of fiscal 2023 release, and Ultra Street Fighter 6 for a release in Q4 of fiscal 2024. And Capcom's fiscal year does follow the traditional fiscal year calendar, which means that a Q3 release will be sometime between October through December of 2022. So that's the timeline you can expect when Street Fighter 6 will launch, which lines up with Dusk Golem's information earlier that the game was pushed back and the team was given an additional year to develop the project and would now be released in 2022. And using that same logic, Super Street Fighter 6 will be released sometime between January and March of 2023, and Ultra Street Fighter 6 will be released sometime between January and March of 2024. As for the validity of this leak itself, it was backed up by IGN, when they stated in their coverage and from their sources that they were able to confirm that Street Fighter 6 was a legitimate title on the list, but the dates could be potentially out of date. And IGN usually is a relatively reliable source due to their connections in the industry and just the sheer size of the company. But they are saying that yes, Street Fighter 6 is happening, but this could be an outdated list. The timeline lines up with what we've heard, so I'd say pretty close to probably what we'll actually see. So what should we expect from the title moving forward? Well, according to the internal leak from Capcom, the title will be released in holiday of 2022, and if you are someone who tends to believe leaks, the team is using 2021 to rework the game after early attempts by Ono to create a version of Street Fighter 6 that testers were not understanding. It looks like the game will no longer be a Sony exclusive, and it will be available to a lot of players right at launch. And that for the most part is everything we know about Street Fighter 6 and where I'm going to end this video. Make sure to like and share, subscribe for weekly gaming news, and I will see you guys in the next one.